Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Life and Air Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life and Air Show, we help people make more, work less, and create lives and businesses they love. I am joined by my Polish co-host, Polish Peter. What's up, bro?
Hey, man, I'm excited because we have another Polish guy coming onto the show, and it's what?
It's a 3P show.
3P.
Yeah. So on this call, we are joined by my favorite business author, Mike Michalowicz, or as Peter would say,
Michalowicz.
Right. Okay. Exactly. No one understood that. So we're going to go with Mike Michalowicz. So this is an awesome interview. We talk about his process for business approaches to fix issues. We talk about profitability. We talk about marketing. We talk about the entrepreneurial mindset. We talk about what business serving you versus you serving your business. Tons of great topics, man.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've asked him on this particular episode, what are some small steps that you can take as a business owner to help you move in that right direction? And you use the example of, let's say, the profit first. And when you start implementing that, because a lot of our people in life and actually are doing that, you start seeing profitability in your business and in your life.
Absolutely. Let's jump in right now. Mike Michalowicz. Mike Michalowicz, welcome to Life in a Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jason, it is an honor for me to be here. Thanks for having me. Peter, it's good to see you, brother.
Right on.
We were just talking before we started. We have three Polacks on the line here, so this could be we don't know what's going to happen. We can't predict anything. All liability and disclaimers are in effect as of right now. And so Mike, I got to tell you, I'm a little geeked out right now because you've had a huge impact on my business. So our business is called Life and Air. And our whole journey here is to help people live. And I detect these tones very strongly throughout your books as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we're all about helping people create a business that serves them rather than takes away from their life. And that seems like a theme that's really prominent throughout your books as well. How did you start to realize this for yourself and pursue this?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I guess with age comes wisdom, because when I started my first business when I was very young, and I had children very young. My first son was born when I was 21. So I started early in life, and I was a workaholic, and I was proud of it. But as I kind of looked back as I was moving along, like I wasn't proud that I missed my son walking for the first time. I missed the first soccer game. I missed all those things. And I'm like, I'm not gonna look back and say, my life is rah, I could work till midnight. I look back on my life and say, I was there. And so it started to change this framework. But I'll tell you the defining moment for me, I'll never forget it. It was this one week that I didn't see the sun at all. I woke up and went to work before the sun rose. I worked in an inside office for my office. And then when I leave, the sun already set. And I was like, I don't even see the sun anymore. What is my problem? And that was a visceral enough moment that I realized I'm not in business. I'm not in life to support business. I'm in business to support my life. And I got to flip this around.
So why do you think, certainly there's an entrepreneurial bug that like a lot of us love the challenge of the chase and the thrill of the kill and being successful in business. But this seems like an ongoing issue, especially in our culture where like, I feel like the hustle is glorified and being business glorified. It's like looked at a badge of honor. Like, oh, you think you work hard? Let me tell you about like what I do. And
right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I hate to pick on the media, but any magazine you see, books, and I'm guilty too, is we pick certain entrepreneurs as the pinnacle of success. Like look at Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or Sarah Blakely or Elon Musk. These are successful people. And then we try to deconstruct their habits. Well, Elon Musk sleeps in his own office, works through the night. These people don't even breathe air. We got to do the same thing. The thing is, they are basically the lottery winners of entrepreneurship. They are not the typical journey, but we're epitomizing them to be typical. They're atypical. They're the anomalies. The vast majority of business owners don't have those kind of experiences. And there's some like wildly successful entrepreneurs. You'll never hear their name. They're not seeking the media. They're just crushing in business. And they're sitting home Friday at 12 noon, drinking a Mai Tai at their pool as they're having time with their kids and family. That's not exposed. So I think we're exposed to this mentality. But secondly, then it feeds on itself because there's this comparative effect. You worked 5 hours today. My God, that's my morning. I worked 12 hours and someone else 12 hours. I worked 72 hours straight, no sleep. Look, I'm dying. Like, and we start bragging about this.
Right.
So I used to wear the workaholic badge myself. I was very proud of it. That moment, the not seeing the sun kind of woke me to that. That's now a shame. And I think what's important is our association. The second we associate pain with something, we'll start avoiding it. But if we associate joy or pleasure with it, we'll accumulate it. I used to think it was joyful to be a workaholic. And now I'm ashamed of that. I'm embarrassed that I even ever felt that way. I put absolute pain associated with workaholism. I now believe my biggest job is to find other people who want to work and provide them with jobs, not do the work. I'm stealing the work from them. If I'm doing it, give other people the opportunity for employment and give everyone an opportunity to live life in the way we want to, but not just work.
Do you think there's also an element of fear involved? Like, you know, people are afraid, oh, my competition's working harder than me, or it's on me whether this thing sinks or swims, and nobody cares about my business. And all this stuff. So it's almost a fear-driven compulsion to work and work, hoping that you're getting ahead. Yet at the same time, one thing you mentioned also made me think too, is when we step away from work a little bit more, maybe that's where, and we give other people the opportunity to work, that's where our best work will come from. That's where our most creative ideas will come from. And maybe it's the best thing for us. Yeah.
There's definitely this comparative effect, right? So I see someone do something because my business is books. I see someone that sells a lot of books through a promotion. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I just put in a little more time, I could do that promotion too. So there's kind of this replication, but I really got to look at the aggregate. And what helped me was having a life's purpose. You can't see it's off camera, but on my wall, I have a saying here. It says, eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. I have it in my house. I have it everywhere as my reminder of my life's mission. And that it's my job to serve that mission, not by working longer hours, but finding the smartest way and most effective way to do it. So how can I outsmart, not my competition, how can I outsmart myself to achieve my vision quicker? It's the concept of PRs. So if you're in athletics or sports, there's these things called personal records. Our goal is, beat the competition, but really it's to be our best. So I keep on trying to PR what I'm doing. And inevitably, the only way to get there is through smarts. And to your earlier point, smarts comes through thought. Like there is a statue dedicated to the most important element of entrepreneurship, thinking. It's called the thinker. Michelangelo made this, naked guy sitting there thinking. He didn't make the doer. It's not some guy with a phone, pulling his hair out, panicked, a tie choking him. They didn't make that. And sadly, many entrepreneurs focus on doing, and they negate what will have the true impact, which is thought. If we think more and we're more strategic, we can move forward in leaps as opposed to trying to constantly run the distance.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's probably where I'm imagining, so your books, and I have all your books, dude.
Thanks, brother.
Totally creepy right now. You're probably
you're a stud.
And so I've read all of them except I have not read Clockwork yet. But here's the thing, but one of the things that strikes me about you as an author that I haven't seen anywhere else, and one of the reasons, when I think of why are you so popular and well revered, it's because one, I think, your personality is very, very amenable with people and amenable, but more than that, you have a real knack for identifying a problem, a specific problem, and then coming up with a very simple solution to it, which is, quite frankly, in some cases, I'm like, and I'm sure this is a common reaction in your readers, are like, wow, why didn't I think of this?
Yeah, totally.
Whether you're talking about your process for fix this next, and you have this, your hierarchy,
whole system there,
or even profit first. Why didn't I think about paying myself first? So how is this something that how did you become so good at this?
Because he's Polish, man, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Polish power.
That's right.
Because I'm Polish, and I struggle. So I have a thing called hypomania. Hypomania, I was diagnosed clinically with this, and what it is in part a relentless energy stream. Like you just can't stop. Which sounds somebody like, oh my God, it's amazing. I wish I had that. Yeah. Tell your wife that when your wife's like, hey, let's sit down and watch a movie. You're like, I can't, I got to work. I got to do stuff around the house. Let me fix something. You can't turn it down. Well, one of the components, at least in my experience with it, is I can't stop processing. And therefore complex tasks, I just get caught in this mire. So if you try to put, a cash flow statement in front of me or something, I'll just keep on churning and churning and churning with it because it's just too much information, and I'll go in this hypo speed around it. So my coping mechanism is to boil it down to the essence of what's impactful. If I can understand something in 10 seconds or less, then I'll stick with it. Otherwise, my attention kind of runs out very quickly. So I need that as a coping mechanism. The books I write are all coping mechanisms for my own struggles. And that's why I think I have that skill of simplifying things, because I can't understand it otherwise.
Well, you've done it phenomenally in your books. And I feel like what you've done essentially, and please correct me or modify what I'm about to say, but like I feel have addressed a lot of the challenge, because business, I'm not going to say is easy. Like, I mean, there's real things that you are struggling with and you are challenged with, and whatever it's whether we're talking about economics or competitors or whatever, ideas, whatever. But you have we have Pumpkin Plan, which talks about your ideal customer and how to find that person, how to develop that relationship. So now you're addressing like the customer and the sales side of the equation. You have, and this isn't in any particular order, or maybe it is, but then you have, okay, well, now I'm making sales, but I'm not profitable. So, hey, here's profit first. And so here's a way to do that. And then you have, okay, well, now you're growing, you're profitable. Let's systemize, let's outsource, let's delegate, let's create a machine versus a one person, circus conductor here.
Right.
And so you have clockwork, and you have this, what I feel like is a step-by-step kind of guide to business. Is that the way you intended this to work? Or is this just happenstance that this kind of came out this way?
A little bit of both, a little dash of salt, a little dash of pepper. I mean, when I started writing, I just started writing. But what happened after my first book, it was called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. It was my, kind of this, honestly, a sophomoric presentation of some core business concepts, but I had a lot of fun, and it won over this kind of cult following because it was such a bizarre read. But those readers I was out in contact with, and I said, what do you need next? And they said, well, now I've got my business started. How do I do X? How do I become profitable? And that triggered profit first. And once to your exact point, the next book was the next step that the reader needed. Then I got to the point, and I started having to fix this next, that I'm so blessed. There's so many readers I have that now the feedback is like, I don't know what I need to do next. There's all different needs. So I wrote Fix This Next, which is on how to find what to fix. And now with my next book, which is called Get Different, I'm focusing on the fundamentals of marketing, because now I'm looking at kind of these mass concepts and how they're overthought. The hypomania, I got to boil it down. I'm looking at marketing. For the business category, it is the number one most saturated segment, if you will, for business needs is marketing. You go to Barnes & Noble's, if you go to Barnes & Noble's, and the biggest section in the business section will be marketing. And I'm like, wow, there's so many marketing books, yet so few businesses effectively market. Like, what's wrong? All the knowledge is there. What's wrong? And my assessment is it's too complex. It's about marketing plans, it's about all these different things, but it's missing the essence of marketing. So I wanted to boil it back down in that book. And that's how that came about.
Gotcha. So, and that makes a lot of sense. And so, and speaking of marketing, this is, with Life in Air, we have a challenge, because we believe that everybody, whether you have a business or whether you are having a job or whatever, you should have what we call a Life in Air vision. It's a personal vision, very similar to what you were talking about. And everything in life revolves to and points to that one document. And we were like, well, everybody needs a vision. Like everybody, if you're a college student, you need a vision because you're making your first steps out into the real world. If you're 40, 50, you've experienced the pain of workaholism or whatever. And kind of like, just drifting at sea with the winds. Like, you need a vision. And so that's made marketing very hard for Life in Air, because we're like, who do we target? Like, because it's such a large concept. For us, it's become almost from from a point of platform in that, myself as well as the founder and a lot of our coaches have a real estate investing background. So we're like, well, let's just focus there for now because real estate investors, and that's how I got to meet David Richter, who referred me to you.
Right.
That's the connection. And so it's an interesting, I can't wait to read that book, man, because we're going to hopefully pick some of that stuff up and run with it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but I also think instinctually you're doing the right thing. When we start a business, we inherently know what we want. But when we start out, we may not have any customers. So how do you find a customer if you only know what you want? Well, we look internally and say, well, if I was the customer, because I want this for myself, who's like me out there? So a good common starting spot when you don't know who the perfect avatar is people like you. It doesn't mean that'll be the ultimate group. And so I'll give you an example. When I became an author, writing books is like any other product. It's a physical product. It goes on a physical shelf or virtual shelf, but it's like any other product. It's the epitome of an information product. It's just knowledge. And so I'm like, I think college students are going to want this, particularly white male college students, because I was a white male college student when I started my first business. So I'm like, that's who I'm going to target, me. So I started going to these colleges. I was trying to hawk books, and beer money is a lot more valuable than book money. So people aren't buying books. They're out buying beer. And I'm like, this isn't working. And this is a true story. I got a call from one of the students' moms. So one of the students bought a book and I guess brought it home and just left it there. And the mom saw this bizarre title, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, started reading it. And she called me and she said, hey, I read your book. She was like, you wrote this for me. Like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. And I was so stuck in the avatar as me. I was like, thank you, but no, thank you. Hung up. 2 or 3 times I got calls just like that, or emails from moms who read it. So finally on the 3rd or 4th call, I answered. I asked, I said, why is this book written for you? And she said, you're the first male author, or in this case, authority, that is speaking to me in an empowering way where you are not pandering to me. Most of the quote unquote support I'm getting from experts is actually very pandering. And she said, you're not. And she said, this is for me. She's like, hey, do you want to speak? There's a mom's group of entrepreneurs. Do you want to speak there? I'm like, yeah. My first book, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, the vast majority of that book actually sold into the mompreneur market. And I really started to understand that niche. I understood the importance of how I presented myself. I understood that it's kind of weird being the only guy walking in, because everyone's going to see you as the creepy guy. Like, who's this creep here? And you got to instantly deflate that and present yourself. You got to be one of, and not present from a position of authority, but a position of sharing. And I also noticed my contemporaries, when they were invited to events like that, unintentionally, they were pandering. And so I was like, this is a market I'm getting to understand, and really cared for that market. That market then lifted me on their shoulders, her shoulder, and they carried me into the broader market. And so that was 13 years ago. But I'd say about 10 years ago, I started breaking into the big market because the female entrepreneur was carrying me into the broader market.
That's fascinating.
Wow, that's very cool, man. Awesome. So I'm hearing that you probably have a completely different conversations with your wife now.
Totally. Like, it's so funny. Like, just some of the words I was using and the way I was presenting myself has changed as a result. And the interesting thing is, it also was an awareness I needed to humanize myself more for male audiences. Like, thank you for that kind word, Jason. You said, you're very relatable. I've worked on that, and not that I'm not, and we aren't relatable, but sometimes when we're on stage, the way we present ourselves, or if we're writing about a book, we want to come across as an authority so we can show this knowledge with vigor. But I realized very quickly how I present it is very important, and it has to be relatable for it to be digested.
Awesome. Yeah. So listen, I got one question for you, because just like Vojo, I mean, I've read all your books. I've been following you for a while.
Good man, Peter.
Especially the Polish last name.
Were they in Polish though, or were they in English?
How can I not, right? Nice. So if you have some Polish people following you around, man, just, watch out.
I love it.
But sounds to me like every single one of your books just solves one problem, right? Pretty much the majority of the big problem that it solves. And business owners, as they are reading those books and probably reaching out to you, things like that, because it's such a, like profit first, for instance. Who would have thunk that you should look at profit first?
Right.
So when you go and have those kinds of conversations, what's the challenge that they're really, because switching that is probably not so easy. It's simple, but it's not as easy for these people. So how do they get through this? What's the challenge that they actually go and how you help them solve that?
Yeah, you're right. So some of the stuff I write doesn't feel believable. In Clockwork, I mandate you got to take a 4-week vacation. So when you guys read that book, that may be kind of slapped in the face. Like it's mandatory. And people are like, no, I've never done that before. I never will. You're an idiot, Mike. Or profit comes first. No, everyone knows, standard accounting, sales minus expense equals profit. This is wrong. So what I have to do is unwind this past thinking. The 2 ways to do it is first I say, well, the way you have been doing it, honestly, how has it served you? Are you posting quarterly profits? You're like, well, no, I've never been profitable. Okay. So the way you're using isn't working. I just want to be very clear about that because then maybe we can experiment with something new. And that's the second step. The second step is I can't convince anyone of anything, but you can convince yourself. And so we have to be willing to do small experiments. In Profit First, in Clockwork, all my books, I lay out the smallest step that will start seeing some results where you can start getting momentum. So Profit First, I say, listen, there's this whole system, but if you're willing to take 1% of any income that comes in, transfer that money and hide it from yourself, we're going to call it profit, and never touch it, that will prove out the system to you that it may or may not work. Will you be willing to do that? And if I can get people to take that first step, and I start seeing a little money piling up, and then the business is running the same way, but for the first time ever, money's piling up, then they start convincing themselves and leaning into it.
Awesome. I love that. I'm curious now, just popped into my head as you're sharing about this because we're talking about business. I don't know if you have kids. Do you have kids?
3, yeah.
3. Okay. I got 3 of them too. They're awesome, right?
Yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah.
So that's a whole other conversation, right? But so are you incorporating that into the personal life as that for the kids and, bringing that?
Yeah, my kid. Yeah. So in Profit First, the book, there's a small section called the Profit First Life, which outlines how to translate this to our home life. So my wife and I do the system. We've introduced it to our kids. Here's the interesting thing. My kids are just like anyone else's kids. They don't want to listen to dad. Like, he's an idiot.
But you're an authority.
So we're all idiots. And at times I think my kids are right about me. So what I did is bring in someone else that teaches the system that I wrote, but teaches it. They're willing to listen to someone else. So my oldest is of the age where he can be using Profit First, and he does. My daughter's just implementing it. My youngest, he's the next one up to be taught the system, but not by me.
That's awesome. That's smart, man.
Funny how that works. That is
really smart. You got to start bringing other people to teach.
Kids. Listen, if I talk with your kids, they'll listen to me, and we can do a swap here, Peter. You come to my house, you talk to my kids, we're golden.
Touchdown.
Yeah.
That's funny how that works, right? It doesn't matter who you are as a parent, your kids have a filter. Do you see, so Mike, what do you see as being the current biggest challenge for a lot of business owners, or is it really just so specific in each individual business? Like, so you're like, hey, here's the challenges that I've seen through my reader feedback, through people sharing to me. Like, what are some of the common stumbling stones you see people?
Yeah, I mean, it is specific to the stage of the business. I will tell you what I see the most common misperception entrepreneurs have, therefore probably the biggest challenge. Most entrepreneurs believe that their cure to whatever ill they have is more sales. That's a big mistake. So most business owners say, I can sell my way out of this, or I just need that next big client. If we just get that one client, everything's fixed. Mm-hmm. And here's why it doesn't work. Sales translates directly to stress. Here's how it works. I sell you something. Now, Jason, I owe you something. I have a responsibility to deliver on it. I sell Peter now I have a responsibility to deliver to 2 people. The more I sell, the more responsibility on me. And as a small business owner, that's the more on my shoulders. So sales translates to stress. And stress also often translates to dysfunction. So as a business gets more sales, it becomes more dysfunctional, and it becomes harder to deliver on promises. And we keep trying to sell our way out of it. And it starts this really downward spiral. It results in check by check survival. Usually, if a business is not profitable and they're trying to sell their way out of it, it's actually not a sales problem. It's a profit problem. We need a profit system. If the business owner is trying to fix everything, but nothing's working, that's usually an efficiency problem. So those are usually the first 2 levels that we look at. Is there's a profitability issue. They don't understand margins correctly. They're not pricing properly. They don't understand the throughput of their organization, or there's an efficiency issue. There's too much weight on the owner's shoulders. They don't know how to truly delegate. stuff like that.
So do you have, I know you have, for instance, like a profit first professional and things like this. Do you have people in your organization that are versed in all of your concepts and like they're consulting with businesses? What does that look like for people?
I do. So this is my own model I developed to live kind of the principles I have. So every one of my books has an organization behind it. They're all individual organizations. So for Clockwork, for example, there's a company called Run Like Clockwork. We teach the entire system of it. And there's a president for the company. It's not me. I'm a co-founder, but not president. And then for my new book, Get Different, we have that. For Pumpkin Plan. For all my Fix This Next, all my books has an organization behind it that specifically delivers the training and knowledge around that subject.
Gotcha. So what does somebody do so there's no one person that's versed in all of them though. So like
but when you read the books, it'll say, hey, you want to do this right, go to this website. So any of the books, you can go to the book's dedicated website, and that's the starting point. But there's no one all-knowing person. And actually, that's my argument is like, be very careful of the surgeon who says, I do brain surgery, heart surgery, and foot surgery. You want to go to just the brain surgeon because that's all she does. She's masterful at that. The second someone starts diluting themselves, they become ineffective at the other things. So, I'm taking my own medicine here. We have dedicated companies that are what we hope to be the world's leading authorities on these subjects and provide the highest level of service. Got it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was just wondering from perspective of like, hey, I got this fixed now with my Pumpkin First professional, and now I need to go find the Clockwork person.
Yeah, and they're interconnected, right? Okay. So what we do is once you say you use the Pumpkin Plan to resolve, recruiting great customers or something like that. Once you have that, you may say, okay, my next big roadblock is profitability. Well, our teams are interconnected. They'll say, oh, let's introduce you to our efficiency team, the Clockwork team, and help you there. So that's how we kind of maintain and matriculate a client relationship.
Gotcha. Is there anything, so when is your new book scheduled to be released, or is it still in the writing stage?
Yeah, the new book's called Get Different. No, it's all written. In fact, I thought I had it on my desk. No, it's all written. I have the manuscript. They just sent me this, what's called second pass manuscript, but it's ready to come out on September 21st, which is ironic. The book, I was done writing it 3 months ago. It takes another 9 to 10 months through mainstream publishing to actually get on bookshelves. Just how it works, but it's ready to go.
Do you have any preview content you can give us that would our listeners get
Sure. So I analyzed marketing, and what I found is the reason most marketing plans fail is because they're not considering I call the milliseconds of marketing. Marketing actually happens in milliseconds because our thoughts happen in milliseconds. So if you blink as fast as you can right now, it takes longer to blink than it does to process a thought and consider doing something or not. So our marketing has to be that effective. Well, there's a framework. I call it the DAD framework, DAD. First, your marketing must differentiate. Different gets noticed. If you do the same stuff as everyone else, it's invisible because our minds become what's called habituated to it. It's literally invisible. So first, differentiate, get noticed. But then it also must be attractive. Attractive means it must speak to what the audience desires, your prospect. You can dress like Bozo the Clown and go waka waka, trying to get attention, and you will, but people may run from you from, Mr. Crazy Clown. So it has to be attractive. The last stage is direct. Once you have their attention, direct them to take an action that's reasonable. If I'm selling a car or something, our first phone call, I can't say, give me $100,000 and then we'll have a conversation about what you want. It's too big of an ask. I may say, give me your email address and I'll send you a list of the vehicles we have available. So what's a reasonable ask? Use that DAD framework on any of your marketing and it'll instantly be more effective.
So that's interesting because, most of us are taught like, hey, look at what your competitors are doing. And if they're doing it, it's obviously working. And so, if that ad has been in Sky Mall for like 4 years, it's making money, copy what they're doing.
Work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the trap of best practices. And the challenge of the best practices is that's the established method. It's kind of like junk mail. You receive junk mail all the time and we can just sort right through and throw it out. It has to be different to get noticed. The best practice is usually the one thing not to replicate because it's more likely to be seen as invisible. Huge tip. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to see the book. Gentlemen, Peter, you soon, buddy. I appreciate both of you guys. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks. See you.
See you guys later.
Man, that was super cool. I really enjoyed speaking with him. Really smart guy. And the thing that if any of our listeners have checked out his books, first of all, you all should be reading his books. They are fantastic. If you're a business owner, you don't know what you're missing. He has, just search his name and you'll find tons. He has about a half dozen books here that he's written, all of which are fantastic. And so the thing that struck me about him, man, is that he is able to identify a clear problem and then solve it in a very simple term. It's not some long, drawn out, complex, multi-step, formula. And, as he just solves it, he's like, hey, here's the problem. And here's a simple solution to it. And, when you read his books, and he kind of spoke about it here, it's sometimes deceptively simple. And you may wonder hey, is this too simple? Does this really work? But it does. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think what he mentioned at one particular time in the episode, he talked about this. He's got this brain that's constantly going, right? And never shuts down. And what I love about that is he uses it to his advantage, because because of that his brain is constantly going, he's able to go and pinpoint, okay, how do I slow that part down? And he finds those unique things to be able to incorporate into the business, like profit first and clockwork and all those kinds of things. And when you start looking from that perspective, so listeners here, look at what you have in your own life, how you operate in your life, and how you can use that to your advantage.
Well, even better, I think it's like he mentioned he has a clinically diagnosed condition with this. So let him do the work for you. You don't want to be thinking about business all the time. You want to be present with your family. You want to enjoy your time. And so this is a great lesson in taking the solutions that others have already provided.
Yeah. And you know what? And one thing that he mentioned, I loved when he was talking about the women. He was talking to himself basically in his books, but look how it has spread across the spectrum to women, to other people. And that's actually really good thing for us to know, because sometimes we feel like we have to talk to everybody, right? And when he was talking to himself when he was writing the books, inadvertently, he was talking to a lot more people. So that should give us a peace of mind when we do marketing, when we do stuff in our businesses, to just talk to this avatar. And you'll be surprised how many people actually can relate to what you're saying.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, man. And so whether you read Mike's books or not, a few of the factors that I believe have accounted for success, I kind of mentioned on the episode, is one, he's relatable. So be relatable. I don't care what business you're in, whether it's retail, whether it's services, whether you're providing coaching, whatever, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Be relatable with people. We're all people. You are doing business with people. People do business with people they like and they can relate to. And so it doesn't mean you have to pretend to be something you're not. You're just letting your personality come through. If you've followed Mike, you realize he's just a regular guy who just is pretty transparent, and people enjoy that. Number two, keep it simple when you're looking at things. And then three, I think, and actually maybe this one should have been before, keep it simple, is thinking clearly about the challenges you have, and then focusing on what the simplest solution is to that. I think those are huge tips. And also, we didn't talk about this at all, but you can really only fix one thing at a time. I don't think you can't,
right.
You can't go and identify 5 different places that need fixing and try to fix them all at the same time. You got to pick one first. And actually his book, Fix This Next, does address a lot of that for business. If you haven't checked that out yet.
Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, we see this all the time in our lives, right? If you're fixing carburetor on your car, for instance, you're not fixing brakes at the same time. Yet somehow we feel like in business, we should be fixing 15 things at one time. Why is that, right? So I'm excited about that we had to actually connect with him and share him with our life and our community here.
Yep.
And I can't wait to see what the next book is going to hold, because it talks about marketing that speaks my language.
Yeah,
so I'm really excited about this.
I'll pick it up for sure. Well, listen, we hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you did, leave us a review, leave us a rating, give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever the rating system is of your choice.
7 stars.
7 stars. Awesome. And we would love to hear from you as well. So if you ever have any feedback or ideas for the show, hit us up in the Life Inner app, which, by the way, if you don't have already, you're missing out. It's a great place to have conversations and discussions with other Life Inners, other people that are choosing to live a better life and have a better business. And so we'd love to see you there. Go to lifeinner.com to find out how to download that for your Android or iPhone device if you haven't already. Until next time, we'll see you guys soon.